Everyone knows Ferrari, right? It's about red luxury cars, prestige, and a lot of money. Maybe Italy comes to your mind too. But I bet you have no idea who is the man behind this legendary brand. He could have been a crazy driver just like Michael Schumacher, but instead built up this car brand. But there's so much more. Let me tell you about it now. Take a look at this photo from 1918. The logo looks familiar, huh? But this guy's last name is not Ferrari, but Baracca. Francesco Baracca is an Italian legend, a World War I fighter pilot who died shortly after this photo was published. So I wondered why this logo looks extremely similar to Ferrari's. While Baracca was a legend, Enzo was an unknown 19-year-old blacksmith who served in the Italian army. Ferrari was born in Modena, Italy, to a middle-class family. A little 10-year-old boy was impressed by racing driver's victory and decided it was his fate. It sounds very familiar to me because the same thing happened to Soichiro Honda, and I have a whole episode about it on my channel. Similar to Honda, Ferrari worked at a metal workshop, helping out his father and also gaining experience for himself. The First World War began when Enzo was 16 years old, and this war took away his father's and brother's lives. Enzo himself was young and ambitious. He tried to get a job at Fiat but was rejected. Interesting fact, considering that Fiat owned the Ferrari company for almost 45 years later. Anyhow, after being rejected by Fiat, Enzo Ferrari served in the military and later worked at many companies. But his real career began when he was 23. He was involved in several races, gained some fame, and became a race car driver for the Alfa Romeo racing team. Alfa Romeo at the time was a popular Italian racing car brand, but still quite small compared to Fiat, which had about 90% of the Italian market. In general, most Italians at the time couldn't afford to have a personal car, and the domestic automobile industry hadn't yet reached the scale of mass production. As for the survival of automakers such as Alfa Romeo and Maserati, it depended on external subsidies, financing, and government contracts. And the government did support Alfa Romeo in particular. By the mid-1920s, Italian Prime Minister Benito Mussolini, a racing enthusiast, noted the international prestige of the sport. His goal was to compete with international companies, especially the German Mercedes, literally. His plans and ambitions were to demonstrate the superior potential of Italian engineering and industrial products to the world, using Alfa Romeo's victories. Frankly, Alfa Romeo's racing division was run as a gentleman's driver club, whose customer base was the main source of funding. The Gentlemen's Club traditionally consisted of wealthy car owners, the collectors, and talented drivers who wanted to become famous for their skills were paid to rate for the club. Enzo Ferrari became one of these racers in 1920, when he was only 22. Hold on. I guess not only 22, since now people start racing at 8 years old. And some drivers might start competing in F1 as early as their late teens, while others might not make it to the top level of motorsport until their mid-20s or later. So I guess he was an okay age to start his career. Let's get back to that logo confusion for a second. Francesco Baracca, the legend, had already passed away, but his parents, especially his mother, were impressed by Enzo's first ever victory. They never met before that event, but because the mother wanted to cherish her son's memory, she suggested Enzo place the prancing horse emblem, their family's crest, as a mascot on his cars. He didn't do so until 9 years later, and it wasn't just a logo for him. It meant speed, thrill, glory, courage, technological prowess, and life-threatening risks. Everything that describes motorsport. Alfa Romeo really changed it all for Enzo. I mean, he became wildly popular and got money to finally set up his own racing division, Scuderia Ferrari. Well, he didn't have all the money. Enzo also solicited financial help, and it was a division of Alfa Romeo that provided him with equipment and support. This team soon was quite known for its superstar drivers. This outgoing man and the prancing horse logo drew on the myth of aviation pioneers and the heroic war of the First World War, and I think this was Enzo's deliberate strategy. Enzo Ferrari retired from his professional driving career the same year his son Alfredo was born. He then concentrated on Scuderia Ferrari, which was fairly independent from Alfa Romeo, until Alfa Romeo faced financial troubles and decided to take over Enzo's division, forcing him to go back to the racing team he used to work for, Alfa Corsa. This is when things started heating up between the two sides. And even though Enzo was pretty good at managing the team, he left the company 2 years later. Well, it was not an easy move. Alfa Romeo made Enzo sign an agreement to leave out Ferrari as a name for 4 years. You may think, what? Only 4 years? But yeah, this is what they agreed on, and of course, no one could know that World War II was around the corner. Just before the war, Enzo started his own automobile company, Auto Avia Costruzioni. A few years later, he created his first racing car, but it was not a success on the track. Another thing is that the car industry in Italy was generally in pretty bad shape. During the war, Italy was an ally of Germany. And no wonder that Enzo's company, just like dozens of others, was forced to produce military equipment for the fascist regime of Mussolini. Enzo was paid very well to construct engines and machines for the production of ball bearings. The funny thing is, whenever I hear of ball bearings, Volvo pops into my mind. Have a look at my videos so you'll understand why. Anyhow, Enzo had strained relations with both the Germans and the Italian resistance movement during the war, and the latter didn't trust Enzo because of his connections with the National Fascist Party. But the thing is, he and every other race car driver and even mechanics were members of the PNF because they were forced to. So, during the war, Ferrari benefited from collaboration with the regime, and it really applies to any other industrialist during the war. But when the war was over, this collaboration got him accused of many things. They even threatened his life. He did say that he was forced to work with the regime, and it kind of makes sense, right? Yet we would never know what was it all really about. Enzo Ferrari began producing cars under his own name only in 1947. He was around 50 then. Take a look at this very first car. That original design and powerful yet lightweight engine marked the beginning of the long series of cars that changed the world. These cars actually destroyed every competitor Ferrari had at the time, but the most significant one was, of course, Alfa Romeo. Ferrari beat Alfa Romeo at Silverstone, home for British motor racing. You know, Enzo cried. He actually did. But not only because of joy, he was also overwhelmed by winning over his longtime favorite team. To make it clear, Ferrari was not a car manufacturer. It was all about racing. But do you realize how much money you need to take a race at Le Mans, for instance? Millions of dollars. Because it is the car you need to have, a complete team, accommodation, and related costs. But most importantly, a lot of training. So, Ferrari needed money to compete, and it started selling sport cars. In fact, many of Ferrari's greatest victories came at Le Mans. But Ferrari's decision to continue racing at Mille Miglia at enormous speeds, on poor roads and with no crowd protection, ultimately led to disaster for both the race and Ferrari. During the 1957 Mille Miglia, a Ferrari 335S driven by Alfonso de Portago was going at 155 miles per hour when his tire burst, and it crashed into a crowd of spectators on the side of the road. The driver himself, the navigator, and 9 spectators, 5 of whom were children, died. In response, Enzo Ferrari and Engelbert, the tire manufacturer, were charged with manslaughter in a lengthy prosecution that was only finally dropped 4 years later. It was not the only case, sadly, but this sport is a high risk, and there is a terrible truth behind any success. And between 1955 and 1971 alone, in addition to Alfonso de Portago, 7 drivers died behind the wheel of Ferrari racing cars. It's not uncommon, yet it shocks me. I guess to understand why people become racers, you need to be born an extreme sport enthusiast. Enzo Ferrari himself was called mysterious, charismatic, autocratic, hot-tempered, unsentimental, and cold-blooded. Well, it's quite possible that he had all these qualities, but I think that with each death of a driver of his team, the pressure on him was going too much to handle. I think he was devastated. What about cars for city roads? The plant in Maranello produced less than 50 road cars per year. Then, 20 years later, the annual production volume exceeded the mark of 1,000 copies, and the total volume of the car deliveries for 2022 was just over 13,000 cars. Sounds a lot. Well, take a look at Volvo, BMW, or Mercedes-Benz. Ferrari's production is not impressive now. But hold on. Because if you take the average car price for each brand in the US this year, it makes perfect sense. Now I get the production difference, right? Enzo Ferrari's bet was never around the number of sales, and it's not the point of the company today, all because of exclusivity. Enzo himself generally paid little attention to his road cars at the beginning because all he cared were races. Interesting fact, the Ferrari racing team is the only stable team because it took part in every Formula 1 Grand Prix race. But because of Enzo's priorities in race cars, the company ran out of money around the year of 1964. Yet, Enzo Ferrari was not desperate. The reason I'm saying this is because when Ford approached him, he refused because Ford was not planning on leaving him in charge. By that time, Ferrari was already in public company, and Enzo negotiated his terms with Fiat, which bought 50% of Ferrari's shares in 1969. Later, when Enzo Ferrari died, Fiat increased its share to 90%. But let's be real. Ferrari isn't doing so great these days in racing. I mean, Ferrari's biggest problem in 2022 was reliability. Each driver twice retired from races during the first half of the season, which ultimately led to the team to turn down their engines for the second half of the campaign, making them less competitive. There's a lot to take in if we were to analyze Ferrari's current management and strategies, but this story was about its founder Enzo, right? Enzo Ferrari's biography helped me out a lot to complete his portrait and his personality and to understand why he was making his decisions. He had a secluded life and rarely gave interviews, never flew on an airplane, and never used an elevator. He lost his 24-year-old son Dino, and it crushed him. He also had an illegitimate son, Piero, but since divorce was illegal in Italy until 1975, Piero could only be recognized as a member of Ferrari's family after the death of Enzo's first wife. He later inherited 10% of the Ferrari's company from his legendary father. Enzo Ferrari's controversial, tenacious, and complex character has yet left an unforgettable mark on the history of the automobile and racing industries, and his passion for motorsport and excellence continues to inspire car enthusiasts and racers around the world. Wow, right? Check out my video about Italy to learn more about politics in this country, and you would probably love to learn more about Red Bull, since it is the one that is doing pretty well in racing sport these days. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it to support my channel. Keep up learning, guys. Success reaches the number of attempts.